sun beats down mercilessly on three figures collapsed beneath the skeletal shade of a kulapa tree. It is June 1861, and the Australian interior stretches endlessly in every direction, a vast, indifferent emptiness. Robert O'Hara Burke lies dying, his lips cracked and bleeding, his body reduced to sinew and bone. Beside him, William John Wills scratches final notes into his journal with trembling fingers, documenting their slow dissolution with scientific precision, even as death closes in. John King, the third man, can barely lift his head. They have traveled over 3,000 kilometers across unmapped wilderness. They have achieved their goal, reaching the Gulf of Carpentaria and claiming glory for Victoria. But now, on the return journey, abandoned by their companions and forsaken by the land itself, they face a fate worse than failure. Dying alone, forgotten, in a place so remote that their bodies might never be found. How did the most ambitious expedition in Australian history end in such catastrophic disaster? What series of decisions, some bold, others catastrophically foolish, with these men from Melbourne's cheering crowds to this desolate creek bed? And why, when survival was within reach, did pride and stubbornness seal their doom? In August 1860, Melbourne is alive with colonial ambition. The Victorian exploration expedition, soon to be known as the Burke and Wills expedition, prepares to depart on a mission that has captured the imagination of the entire colony. Their objective, to be the first Europeans to cross the Australian continent from south to north, from Melbourne to the Gulf of Carpentaria and return. Tarring, the prize is not merely geographical knowledge, but national pride. The colony of South Australia is mounting its own expedition, and Victoria cannot bear to be second. The expedition's leader is Robert O'Hara Burke, a choice that would prove both inspired and disastrous. At 39 years old, Burke is a former Irish soldier and current police superintendent, man of undeniable courage and commanding presence. Tall, physically imposing, with a thick beard and penetrating eyes, he possesses the charisma necessary to lead men into the unknown. But Burke has a fatal flaw. He has no experience with exploration, no knowledge of surveying, and no skill in bushcraft. He is a police officer, not an explorer. Yet, the Royal Society of Victoria appoints him anyway, impressed by his determination and his ability to command respect. His second in command is William John Wills, a 26-year-old surveyor and astronomer, where Burke is impulsive and domineering. Wills is methodical and introspective, the son of a Devon doctor. Wills immigrated to Australia as a teenager and quickly established himself as one of the colony's finest scientific minds. He is quiet, thoughtful, devoted to precise observation and calculation. He keeps meticulous records, takes celestial measurements with exacting care, and approaches the expedition with scientific rigor. The two men could not be more different, yet they will become forever linked in Australian history. The expedition assembles with extraordinary resources. The Royal Society provides £9,000, an enormous sum. The party numbers 19 men, including experienced bushmen, camel handlers imported from India, and German scientist Ludwig Becker, tasked with documenting the natural history they encounter. They bring 27 camels, specially imported from Afghanistan, along with 23 horses and 6 wagons loaded with supplies. The provisions include 3,000 kilograms of flour, 450 kilograms of sugar, bacon, dried meat, rum, scientific instruments, guns, ammunition, and even a Chinese gong to signal between groups. On August 20th, 1860, thousands of Melburnians gather at Royal Park to witness the departure. Brass bands play, dignitaries give speeches, children wave flags. The camels, strange and exotic, draw gasps from the crowd. Burke, mounted on horseback in full expedition regalia, salutes the crowd. Wills, more reserved, checks and rechecks their instruments. The atmosphere is triumphant, celebratory, electric, with possibility. They have no idea they are watching the beginning of Australia's greatest exploration tragedy. The expedition initially proceeds northward through settled districts, following established routes. But almost immediately, problems emerge. The wagons prove too heavy for the terrain, constantly bogging down in soft ground. The camels, though strong, are temperamental and frightened by the unfamiliar landscape. Several men prove incompetent or lazy, and Burke's impatience with subordinates begins to show. He quarrels with George James Landals, the camel master, over the animal's care and management. The dispute grows so bitter that Landals resigns and returns to Melbourne, leaving Burke without his most experienced camel handler. By September, they reach Menindee on the Darling River, 750 kilometers from Melbourne. Here, Burke makes his first catastrophic decision. Obsessed with beating the South Australian expedition, he decides to abandon the slow-moving main party and push forward with a smaller, faster group. He divides the expedition, leaving the bulk of men and supplies at Menindee under the command of William Wright, with instructions to establish a depot and await further orders. Burke will take 8 men, the best camels and horses, forge ahead to Cooper Creek, 650 kilometers deeper into the interior. On October 19th, the advance party departs Menindee. Within weeks, they reach Cooper Creek, a series of waterholes snaking through the arid landscape, one of the last reliable water sources before the true desert begins. Here, Burke makes his second fateful decision. He will establish a depot and make one final dash to the Gulf with just 3 companions, leaving the others to maintain the base camp. He selects William Brahe, an experienced bushman, to command the depot. He chooses Wills as his scientific companion. He takes John King, a former soldier and the expedition's camel handler. And he selects Charlie Gray, a strong but less experienced man. It's 4 men, 6 camels, 1 horse, and 3 months' provisions. On December 16, 1860, Burke issues his final instructions to Brahe: wait at Cooper Creek for 3 months. If they have not returned by then, Brahe may use his discretion. It is a vague order, leaving too much unsaid. Burke does not specify what discretion means. He does not establish contingency plans. He does not consider what might happen if they are delayed. As Burke, Wills, King, and Gray disappear northward into the shimmering heat, Brahe watches them go. The depot camp settles into waiting. Behind them at Menindee, Wright has still not organized the relief party. Communication has broken down. The expedition, once so magnificently unified, has fractured into disconnected fragments scattered across 1,500 kilometers of wilderness. The stage is set for catastrophe. Chapter 1. Into the unknown, the journey north begins with optimism. The landscape, though harsh, presents no immediate obstacles. The 4 men travel through mulga scrubling, crossing red sand plains dotted with spinifex grass. The camels, despite their complaints, prove ideal for these conditions. Their padded feet handle the soft ground. Their endurance allows them to travel for days without water. Burke sets a punishing pace, covering 25 to 30 kilometers daily, far more than prudent. But he is consumed by urgency, driven by the fear that South Australian explorers might reach the Gulf first. Wills navigates using celestial observations, calculating their latitude and longitude each evening with his sextant and chronometer. He maintains the expedition journal, noting temperature, terrain features, and wildlife. His entries are precise, methodical, devoid of emotion. December 21st, latitude 24.5 OS, proceeded north-northwest, country sandy and scrubby. Temperature at noon, 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Camels in fair condition. They pass through country no European has ever seen. Vast salt lakes shimmer with mirages. Rocky ranges rise abruptly from flat plains. They encounter Aboriginal peoples, the Yandrawanda near Cooper Creek, other groups further north who watch these strange men with their stranger animals. Some encounters are peaceful. The explorers trade tobacco and sugar for fish and information about waterholes ahead. Other groups remain distant, observing from the ridgelines. Christmas Day, 1860 passes with little ceremony. They are 400 kilometers north of Cooper Creek now, pressing into the stony desert. The heat is suffocating, the landscape increasingly desolate, but they are making good time. Burke's spirits are high. They will reach the Gulf, he is certain, well within their 3-month deadline. Chapter 2. The First Shadows. By early January 1861, the terrain shifts. Burke alternates between sympathy and rage, sometimes helping Gray along, other times berating him for his weakness. On March 17th, Burke accuses Gray of stealing and eating more than his share of flour. Gray denies it, but Burke is convinced, strikes Gray a cruel, unnecessary blow, born of frustration and fear. The social fabric binding the 4 men together begins to tear. Trust dissolves. Each man becomes isolated in his own suffering. Wills continues taking measurements and maintaining the journal, even as his own body weakens. His scientific detachment is both impressive and disturbing. He documents their decline. With the same precision, he documented geology and weather. The men are in poor condition. Gray, especially, is weak. Our rate of travel has slowed to 15 kilometers per day. Rations are critically low. By late March, they are still 200 kilometers from Cooper Creek. The terrain is familiar. Now they are retracing their outward route, but familiarity provides no comfort. They know every waterhole they must reach, and they know how far apart they are. The distances that seemed manageable on the journey north now feel insurmountable. Chapter 5. Gray's death on April 8th. Charlie Gray collapses and cannot rise. For days he has been failing, growing weaker with each kilometer. Now his body simply gives out. They make camp, trying to revive him with water and the last scraps of food, but it is too late. That night, Charlie Gray dies beneath the stars, far from home, his body consumed by starvation and exhaustion. The 3 survivors are too weak to dig a proper grave. They scoop out a shallow depression, place Gray's body inside, and cover it with sand and stones. Burke reads a brief prayer. Then they move on. They have no choice. Cooper Creek is still 120 kilometers away, and every hour counts. Gray's death shakes them profoundly. He was the strongest of the 4 physically, yet he is the first to die. If Gray could not survive, what chance do the rest of them have? The question hangs unspoken between them. They stagger southward in a daze of exhaustion, days blurred together. They consume the last of the flour. They shoot another camel and choke down its stringy meat. Their bodies are skeletal now, their clothes hanging loose. Wills's journal entries become shorter, less detailed. April 15th, still proceeding south, strength failing. But they are close now. Cooper Creek is just days away. Bra and the depot party are waiting there with food, shelter, rest. They will make it. They must make it. Chapter 6. The Missed Connection. On April 21st, 1861, at approximately 7 p.m. Burke, Wills, and King stumble into the Cooper Creek depot. They have been gone for months and 5 days, more than a month longer than Burke's 3-month estimate. They are walking corpses, barely human, held together by will alone. The camp is deserted. For a moment, they cannot process what they are seeing. The stockade is empty. The tents are gone. There is no smoke from cooking fires, no sound of voices or animals. Just silence and emptiness. Then Wills sees it, a message carved into a kulapa tree. Dig 3 FTN WAPR 211861. With trembling hands, they dig. 3 feet down, they find a cache, flour, dried meat, a letter from Brahe. The letter explains that the depot party waited for 4 months, but could wait no longer. Their supplies were exhausted, and one man was seriously ill. Bra made the decision to abandon the depot and return to Minandi. They left that very morning, just 9 hours earlier. 9 hours. Burke, Wills, and King have missed their rescuers by 9 hours. The cruelty of this timing is almost incomprehensible. If they had traveled a few kilometers faster on any of the previous days, if they had not spent extra time burying Gray, if Brahe had waited one more day, 9 hours. Burke sits heavily on the ground, his face blank. Wills stares at the message tree, unable to speak. King, the youngest and perhaps the most resilient, begins to weep. They have walked 3,250 kilometers across the continent and back, achieved their goal, and returned to find themselves abandoned with only a small cache of supplies between them and death. What happens next will determine whether they live or die, and the decisions they make, influenced by exhaustion, pride, and misguided judgment, will seal their fate. Burke faces a choice. They could follow Brahe's tracks back toward Menindia, journey of 650 kilometers through country they know, toward certain rescue. But the three men are in no condition to travel that distance. The cache contains limited supplies, not enough for a 3-week journey, and Burke's pride rebels against the idea of limping back, defeated, following the tracks of the men who abandoned them. Instead, Burke makes his final, fatal decision. They will travel west, following Cooper Creek downstream toward Mount Hopeless, a pastoral station approximately 240 kilometers away. Hey, it is closer than Menindi. The creek will provide water, and they might find help from local Aboriginal groups. In Burke's mind, it is the rational choice. But Burke has failed to consider one crucial detail. Bra might return. And indeed, Brahe does return. Plagued by guilt over abandoning the depot, Bra convinces Wright to let him go back and check one final time. On May 8th, just 17 days after Burke's arrival, Bra returns to the Cooper Creek depot with fresh supplies and several men, but Burke has made no sign indicating they were there. He did not add a message to the tree. He did not disturb the cache site in any obvious way. In his exhaustion, Burke simply took the supplies and left. When Brahe arrives, he sees no evidence that anyone has been there. He checks the cache. The disturbed earth looks no different to his eyes. Satisfied that Burke has not returned, Brahe leaves again, this time for good. 2 rescue parties have now visited the depot, while Burke, Wills, and King are within 50 kilometers, struggling down Cooper Creek. The tragedy of miscommunication is complete. For the next 6 weeks, the 3 men slowly die. They travel down the creek, growing weaker each day. The supplies from the cache run out. They try to live off the land, eating Nardua, a type of fern seed that local Aboriginal people use, but only after elaborate processing to remove toxins. Burke, Wills, and King lack this knowledge. They pound the seeds and eat them raw, not realizing that improperly prepared Nardu leaches thiamine from the body, accelerating starvation rather than preventing it. The more they eat, the weaker they become. The Yondrawanda people, who know the Creek country intimately, try to help. Tia, they share fish and properly prepared Nardu. But Burke's arrogance and cultural ignorance create tension. He fires his gun to intimidate them, driving them away. The one group that could save them is alienated by Burke's behavior. By late June, they can travel no further. They make a final camp on the creek near a large waterhole. Wills can no longer walk. Burke's body is failing. Only King retains some strength, desperately trying to keep his companions alive. On June 28, 1861, Burke tells King to leave him to seek help from the Aboriginal people. King refuses, but Burke is insistent. King leaves for a few hours, searching for food. When he returns, Burke is dead. Wills, alone with his journal, makes his final entries. His handwriting, once so precise, is now a shaky scrawl. My pulse is at 48 and very weak. Both Mr. Burke and King behaved nobly. I hope we shall be done justice to. I think this is the last time I shall write. On or around June 29th, William John Wills dies. John King, the youngest and least celebrated member of the expedition, is the only survivor. The Yandruwanda people find him near death and take him in. For more than 2 months, they nurse him back to health, sharing their food and shelter, teaching him how to survive on the creek. They save his life. In September 1861, a rescue party, led by Alfred Howard, finally reaches Cooper Creek. They find King alive, skin and bone but breathing, living with the Aboriginal people who saved him. He leads them to the bodies of Burke and Wills, lying where they died, partially buried by the shifting sands. Howard's party retrieves Wills's journal, Burke's papers, and the scientific records. They bury the bodies on the creek bank, marking the graves with simple wooden markers. Later, the Victorian government will organize a state funeral. Burke and Wills's remains will be exhumed and transported back to Melbourne, where they will be honored with a massive public funeral attended by more than 100,000 people. EROS, send-off for men who died through a combination of bad luck, poor planning, and stubborn pride. The expedition achieved its goal. Burke and Wills did cross the continent, beating the South Australian expedition by several months. But the cost was catastrophic. Of the 4 men who left Cooper Creek in December 1860, 3 died. Of the broader expedition, 7 men perished in total. The triumph of reaching the Gulf was utterly overshadowed by the tragedy of the return. John King returned to Melbourne, forever marked by his ordeal. He received a gold watch and a modest pension from the Victorian government, but he never fully recovered from the trauma. He gave testimony at the official inquiry, his words carefully measured, still loyal to Burke and Wills even as the details of their poor decisions emerged. King lived until 1872, dying at age 33, still a young man, but one who had aged decades in those terrible months on Cooper Creek. William Brahe, the man who abandoned the depot, was haunted by guilt for the rest of his life. The inquiry largely exonerated. He had waited 4 months as instructed, and his supplies were exhausted, but the question remained, what if he had waited 1 more day? Brahe never stopped asking himself that question. The Yandruwanda people, who saved King's life and tried to help Burke and Wills, received almost no recognition for their crucial role in the story. They appear in official accounts as distant figures, helpers whose knowledge and generosity went largely unacknowledged by the colonial society that lionized Burke and Wills today. The Burke and Wills expedition stands as a defining moment in Australian history, not for its success, but for its failures. It exposed the dangers of arrogance in the face of the Australian landscape, the folly of speed over preparation, and the fatal consequences of cultural ignorance. Burke and Wills have become symbols of both pioneering courage and tragic hubris. Monuments mark the trail they blazed across the continent. Their graves in Melbourne are visited by thousands each year. The tree at Cooper Creek, carved with that fateful message, still stands, a silent witness to the cruelest twist of timing in Australian exploration history. In the end, Burke and Wills' story is not simply one of exploration gone wrong. It is a meditation on human limits, on the price of ambition, and on the thin line between triumph and disaster. They crossed the continent but could not cross the final 50 kilometers to safety. They achieved immortality, but at the cost of their lives. The desert they vanished into is still there, vast and indifferent, just as it was in 1861. The waterholes still fill and dry with the seasons. The coolabah trees still offer shade to those who pass beneath them. And somewhere in that emptiness, the ghost of their ordeal lingers, a reminder that in the face of nature's immensity, courage alone is never enough. If you found this story compelling, there are many more forgotten tales of survival and tragedy waiting to be told, stories of explorers who challenged the unknown and the landscapes that tested their limits.